Hello everyone, I'm Brendan Kelleher and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to talk about Sylvester Stallone's new director's cut of Rocky IV. 36 years on from its original release, Stallone began work on this project when, like most of us, he was locked down during the initial stages of the pandemic in 2020. And he's done a fantastic job in this new version. In this fourth movie of the hugely popular series, Rocky Balboa faces his most dangerous opponent yet, Ivan Drago, played by Dolph Lundgren. After Drago kills Rocky's best friend Apollo Creed during an exhibition match in America, Rocky faces Drago in Russia in one of the most vicious boxing matches ever put on film. Released in 1985, Rocky IV was one of the biggest hits in Sylvester Stallone's career. I remember seeing this movie on its release back in the day, and it was such an amazing experience. I remember being terrified by the sight of Ivan Drago. And the final fight literally had people screaming at the screen. You just had to be there. It is a product of its time, and is, in all honesty, a very silly film. It's one of the most unrealistic sports movies ever made. Rocky survives a beating that would kill a normal human being, and literally climbs a mountain during his workout. There is a really silly comedic subplot, removed in this new version, of his brother-in-law Paulie celebrating his birthday with a talking robot, which is so out of place. And the whole film is, in all honesty, a huge piece of anti-Soviet propaganda, given that Rocky literally wins the Cold War. But that's part of the movie's charm and why I love it so much. The soundtrack is just classic 80s, and I've watched this film many times over the years. It's often forgotten that Stallone is a very accomplished writer and director, and almost single-handedly was responsible for the series' success. He wrote the screenplays for all the films in the series, and directed several, including this one. This new cut shows how much he's matured as a filmmaker over the years. There are too many changes to the film in its entirety to list all of them in this video, but here are some of the highlights. The film has a new extended opening featuring a recap of Rocky III. This shows some of the most important scenes of Rocky and Apollo's relationship, developing from being former competitors to good friends, which is what drives the central story of Rocky IV. All the scenes which depict Paulie's birthday have been removed. Yes, that includes all the footage of the robot which Rocky gifts Paulie with. This keeps the focus on the main plotline of Apollo wanting to fight Drago before Rocky does. There's some additional footage of Rocky and Apollo discussing the Russians wanting Drago to fight an exhibition bout with Rocky. But Apollo makes it clear that he wants to fight Drago, as he feels he has something to prove. Drago actually has more dialogue in this new version. In fact, some of the lines spoken by his wife, played by Stallone's former real-life wife Brigitte Nielsen, are now spoken by Drago. For some reason, there is a lot less Brigitte Nielsen in this version. Anything from small lines of dialogue and reaction shots from her are removed. I'm sure Stallone did this for purely artistic reasons, and not because she's his ex-wife. In contrast to this, Rocky's wife Adrian, played by Talia Shire, gets slightly more focus in this cut. There are a couple of new scenes between her and Rocky which add more depth to their relationship. Apollo's fight with Drago is significantly changed. In the original version, Apollo is decimated by Drago. Here in this new cut, he puts up much more of a fight, and Rocky failing to stop the fight in time is much better conveyed. The funeral of Apollo has a much more emotional speech from Rocky. In the original cut, he manages to say what he has to say without breaking down. This new cut features an alternate take of the same speech by Rocky, but is much more emotional, featuring more dialogue, and Rocky actually does break down to tears. Stallone's acting in this scene is so good here, and I can only imagine he cut it in the original version for pacing reasons. There's an all-new scene where Rocky has a meeting with the boxing commission over wanting to fight Drago. They advise him to wait for a while. Rocky is having none of it, however, and decides to fight Drago anyway. When Rocky goes to Russia, this new cut fixes what I always thought was a plot hole. When Rocky is training for the fight, he has no sparring partners, which really didn't seem to make sense to me. I'm no boxing expert, but even I know that you cannot prepare for a boxing match without, boxing. This new cut features a short scene where Rocky's Russian guide claims not to have gotten the message about providing the sparring partners that his trainer Tony asked for. The other major change, of course, is that the final fight between Rocky and Drago is heavily re-edited. It cuts out some of the more silly lines of dialogue, and the fight is much more intense in this version. Finally, the film has what could be described as a slightly new ending after Rocky's speech, which I won't spoil here. Let's just say it's a lot less jingoistic and much more realistic than the original version. All in all, I think Stallone has done a great job with this new cut Rocky IV. The film has a much more gritty and mature tone than the original, thanks to removing a lot of the out-of-place comedy scenes. He lets more emotional scenes last a little bit longer, whereas the original seemed to race along through the scenes as if he was afraid audiences would get bored. The film has a lot more emotional impact, as does the fight scenes. There are other minor edits and changes fans will notice. Thankfully, the Rousing Soundtrack has been mostly left intact. It's one of the highlights of this film, and surely inspired a lot of gym-goers' workout playlists. For me, as someone who has seen the original cut of Rocky IV many times over the years, I much prefer this version. It's not just a curiosity, it's the definitive cut of the film. And if for some reason you've never seen this classic movie, I highly recommend that this is the version that you watch. Thanks very much for watching my review of the Rocky IV Director's Cut. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.